At first glance, the question of time travel may seem simple. Its answer either a definitive no, for a multitude of reasons, or an enthusiastic yes, supported by an equally vast array of arguments. Yet in truth, the inquiry into the possibility of time travel stands among the most intricate existential questions humankind has ever contemplated. Since antiquity, the concept of time has ignited deep human curiosity, not merely as a continuous stream or a wave that carries us along, like the ocean pushing a floating ball, but as a mystery tied to the essence of freedom, fate, identity, death, and the dream of immortality. In our present age, time travel is no longer merely an ancient fantasy or a whimsical theme fueling the imagination of science fiction novels and films. It has become a subject of serious discussion at scientific conferences, a topic for philosophical dissertations, and a concept explored within religious interpretations. And yet, it remains shrouded in paradoxes that strike at the heart of our understanding of existence. Does time travel defy logic? Is it compatible with religious doctrine? Is it scientifically feasible? Or is the entire notion a grand illusion serving hidden purposes? Is time a straight line, an arrow that moves relentlessly forward? Are the past and future real, or are they merely labels imposed upon a sequential flow, devoid of true substance? Can time be regarded as a physical dimension, like space, that one can traverse? Or is it simply a human perception, a construct with no reality outside our consciousness? If one were to journey into the past, could they alter their fate? Or are we bound by a fixed destiny, every detail predetermined and unchangeable? Does time travel challenge our sense of self? Would a traveler remain the same person upon returning to the past, or become someone else entirely? And could time itself be a prison for humanity, with time travel offering an escape, not just from its constraints, but perhaps even from death? Despite appearing like a closed loop or a labyrinth whose paths lead endlessly into one another, we are compelled to enter this maze in search of answers to a vast array of existential riddles. Even if we emerge without definitive answers, the very act of embarking on this intellectual voyage reshapes our understanding of time, its relationship with freedom, fate, and the nature of truth itself. Most importantly, it may help recalibrate a compass that has subtly drifted from its true direction. Let us begin with the abstract essence of time, which has long captivated the minds and imaginations of humankind, not merely as cascading grains in an hourglass, or the turning hands of a clock, or even the rhythms of nature in day and night or seasonal cycles, but as an enigmatic force governing every instant of our lives, a law so absolute it binds us inescapably. Or does it? In the late 17th century, Isaac Newton introduced the concept of absolute time in his seminal work Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. He envisioned time as an independent entity, distinct from space and matter, flowing uniformly and unchangingly in the background, unaffected by events or objects. This simplistic notion of time underpinned the formulation of the law of universal gravitation and Newton's laws of motion, all of which rest on the assumption of a single, universal time variable shared by all observers, regardless of their relative velocities. This framework enabled the precise calculation of an object's position, velocity, and acceleration at any given moment, in accordance with the principle of determinism. Determinism, a philosophical doctrine, posits that every event in the universe follows a logically predetermined sequence, an unbroken chain of causality governed by fixed laws, what some refer to as the laws of nature, while the devout view them as the will and decree of God. This conception also contributed to the development of classical dynamics and our understanding of light and electricity, all while treating time as a constant, mathematically rigid and devoid of any deep physical interaction with the material world. However, from the standpoint of classical physics, this understanding fell short of explaining all observable phenomena, paving the way for a scientific revolution that redefined time as an active component of the cosmic fabric. At the dawn of the 20th century, Albert Einstein, through his theories of special and general relativity, introduced a transformative view. Time was no longer an isolated dimension, but an inseparable part of a unified continuum, space-time. Einstein portrayed time as a relative dimension, mutable and dependent on velocity, a concept known as time dilation, where time slows down for objects moving at higher speeds. For instance, if a person were to travel through space at nearly the speed of light for a year, time for them would proceed normally. Yet upon returning to Earth, they would find that hundreds of thousands of years had elapsed here. Gravity in Einstein's general relativity is no longer described as a conventional force, but rather as the curvature of space-time caused by mass. The greater the mass, the more pronounced the curvature, and consequently, the slower time flows in that region. This is the principle of gravitational time dilation. Without delving into overly technical details, we can simplify the distinction as follows. Classical or Newtonian physics treated time as an independent, linear, and uniform variable, a constant reference frame for all events. Relativity, on the other hand, dissolves this constancy, presenting time as a dynamic dimension intertwined with space, forming the fabric of space-time. Moreover, time is also influenced by gravity and velocity, capable of accelerating or decelerating based on the intensity of gravitational fields or the speed of motion. To grasp this shift, let us briefly revisit the notion of dimensions. The universe comprises 4 dimensions: 3 spatial, length, width, and height, and a 4th, non-spatial one-time. These 4 dimensions together form the fabric of space-time. Thus, time is not merely a passive backdrop against which events unfold, but an essential element that interacts with matter and energy, shaping and being shaped by them. In this light, time forms the very foundation of existence, for objects do not merely move through space. They traverse the fabric of space-time itself. As much as relativity seemed to offer a resolution to the riddle of time, it soon found itself confronting the specter unleashed by Max Planck, quantum mechanics. Then came string theory, endeavoring to reconcile the two by presenting a unified mathematical framework that encompasses all fundamental forces in the universe. Though these attempts to understand the nature of time and its relationship to spatial dimensions have yet to yield definitive solutions, they have opened entirely new horizons in our comprehension of life and existence. They have laid the scientific groundwork for exploring additional dimensions that transcend our traditional perception of the material world, approached not only from a scientific standpoint but crucially from a philosophical one. And here, let us underscore the word philosophical. For many so-called scientific theories are, in essence, philosophical hypotheses dressed in mathematical attire. String theory posits that the universe is not composed of point-like particles, as proposed by the standard model of particle physics, but of one-dimensional strings vibrating at various frequencies, with each vibrational pattern giving rise to a different particle. Yet, this theory cannot hold mathematically within the confines of a 4-dimensional framework. To maintain internal coherence, it proposes the existence of 9 spatial dimensions in addition to 1 temporal dimension, 10 dimensions in total, curled up upon themselves in infinitesimal loops, imperceptible to direct observation. In its more advanced form, known as superstring theory, an 11th dimension is added to enhance mathematical harmony and bring the theory closer to a grand unification of all natural forces. With the introduction of these additional dimensions, referred to as higher dimensions, quantum dimensions, or hidden dimensions, time emerges as a concept far more intricate than previously imagined. It may consist of multiple layers or facets, which only reveal themselves through interactions with these hidden dimensions. This revelation has inspired philosophers and scientists alike to reconsider reality not as dimensionally confined, but as a rich and interwoven structure. Thus, string theory redefines time in a way that renders time travel more than mere science fiction. The universe becomes an immense, multi-layered expanse, a vast landscape of parallel universes, other realms that may obey entirely different physical laws or subtly deviate from ours. These universes are adjacent to us within the fabric of space-time, yet remain beyond the reach of our senses and instruments, bound as we are by our perceptual and technological limitations. Now let us circle back to relativity and some of its propositions that affirm the theoretical possibility of time travel. But before we proceed, we must remember that we are still wandering through a labyrinth, one that weaves between scientific insight and philosophical interpretation. And once again, let us emphasize the word philosophical. When Albert Einstein introduced his theory of special relativity in the year 1905, he overturned the prevailing understanding of time by linking it intrinsically to spatial dimensions and the velocity of an object. As previously mentioned, time slows down as one approaches the speed of light. This means that an astronaut traveling at near light speed would return to Earth to find that decades had passed here, while only a few years had elapsed for him. Assuming, of course, that space itself still exists. In this sense, the astronaut would have, at least theoretically, traveled through time. General relativity took this notion even further, positing that gravity influences the flow of time. Again, presuming gravity itself is real. In other words, the closer one approaches a massive object, such as a black hole, the more time slows down relative to someone farther away. If a person remained near the event horizon of a black hole for just a few minutes, they would return to Earth to discover that centuries had passed. Thus, this individual too would be considered a time traveler. Now imagine the fabric of space-time as an actual stretched cloth. Placing a massive object on this fabric causes it to bend. This curvature is what leads smaller objects to orbit around larger ones, moons around planets, and planets around stars. Regardless of whether this is literally true, suppose someone standing at one edge of the fabric wished to reach the opposite side. They would have to traverse a long distance. But if we could fold a fabric so that the starting point meets the destination, a shortcut would emerge, known as a wormhole. A traveler passing through such a tunnel would cover an extraordinarily short distance to journey from one end of the universe to the other, effectively becoming a time traveler. For traversing space-time implies movement not only through space but also through time. Based on these theoretical premises, scientists affirm that travel into the future is, at least in principle, possible. However, travel to the past remains forbidden, obstructed by the law of causality, or more precisely, what is known as the grandfather paradox. If someone were to journey back in time and kill their grandfather before he fathered their parent, how could that person have existed in the first place to make the journey? We shall return to the topic of time travel from a scientific perspective and the solutions some scientists have proposed to resolve this paradox. But first, let us explore what the philosophers have to say about time. The concept of time has long preoccupied the minds of philosophers and thinkers, not as a physical entity, but as one of the most profound ideas entwined with consciousness, existence, and truth. Philosophically, time is not viewed merely as a succession of moments or the ticking of a clock, but as a multi-layered stream. Among these layers is objective time, the material, sequential time familiar to us. Then there is psychological time, the internal sense of time, the human perception of its passage, which varies from person to person, making hours in joy feel like fleeting minutes, while sorrow stretches minutes into what feels like days. Lastly, there is spiritual or eternal time, an infinite, transcendent dimension beyond the bounds of matter, one we cannot perceive within our earthly lives. Some philosophers went even further, questioning the very ontology of time itself. Does time truly exist? Or is it merely an illusion constructed by the human mind to impose logic upon the sequence of events? In this vein, the ancient Greek philosopher Parmenides argued that motion and change are illusions, deceptions of our fallible senses. For him, absolute reality is an unchanging existence, an eternal unity. And since time is inseparable from change, it must belong to the world of illusion rather than to the essence of truth. Plato adopted Parmenides' notion of immutable existence, but sought to reconcile it with the reality of change. He saw time as a moving image of eternity, flawed reflection of the ideal world. Aristotle, on the other hand, asserted that time is real and has existed eternally, not as an independent entity, but as a measure of motion and change. Augustine rejected the idea of time's eternal existence, contending instead that God created time along with the universe. Thus, time is tied to the changeable nature of creation, experienced by creatures as a flowing sequence, but not by God, who beholds all of time in a single, timeless vision. Modern philosophers added new layers to the discourse. Immanuel Kant viewed time as an a priori condition for knowledge. Our minds are innately structured to perceive the world through a temporal lens, though time itself may not be a part of objective reality. Martin Heidegger went further, making time the very essence of human existence. We understand ourselves only through our temporal being in the world, what he called being toward death. Henri Bergson, meanwhile, rooted time in its psychological nature, criticizing its reduction to quantitative units like seconds and minutes. To him, real time is the qualitative flow of lived experience. On another front, some philosophers raised compelling questions about the link between time, identity, and the self. If a person were to travel into the past, would they remain the same? If they were to meet a younger version of themselves, which one would be the real self? Undeniably, those who most vividly exploited these intricate and often contradictory scientific and philosophical propositions were the writers of science fiction, authors who transformed time travel from a purely philosophical meditation into thrilling adventures, dramatic tales, and profound existential reflections. Foremost among them was the pioneering British novelist H.G. Wells, who published his landmark work The Time Machine in the year 1895. Opening the door to dozens of novels that explored time travel as a technological marvel, one that could plumb the depths of the past or unveil the mysteries of the future. With the rise of cinema and television, filmmakers swiftly capitalized on humanity's enduring curiosity and ancient longing, delivering dozens of successful productions that further embedded the idea of time travel in popular imagination. Notable among these is the Back to the Future trilogy, which follows a teenager who travels through time using a time machine built into a car by his eccentric friend. There's The Terminator, telling the tale of a robot sent from the future to assassinate a woman destined to give birth to the leader of humanity's resistance against machines, while a soldier from that resistance travels back to protect her. 12 Monkeys recounts the story of a prisoner dispatched from a post-apocalyptic future to the past to gather intelligence about a deadly virus that decimated most of humanity. Looper presents a grim reality in which a criminal syndicate sends victims into the past to be executed by loopers, one of whom is tasked with killing his future self. Interstellar explores the journey of astronauts through a wormhole in search of a new habitable planet, deeply engaging with the concepts of time and relativity. The butterfly effect dives into the eponymous theory, suggesting that even minor changes in the past can provoke monumental shifts in the future, through the story of a young man able to relive key moments of his life. The time traveler's wife portrays a man afflicted with a genetic disorder that causes him to involuntarily travel through time, and the emotional turmoil faced by his wife in building a life with someone who keeps slipping away through the fabric of time. The genre also flourished in television dramas, such as Doctor Who, chronicling the adventures of a mysterious being who travels through space and time in a machine, encountering alien species and correcting the course of history across the ages. The Girl from Tomorrow features a young woman from the future who journeys to the present, confronting both technological and human challenges in a world far less advanced than her own. In Stranger Things, a boy vanishes in a small rural town, prompting his friends to search for him with the help of a mysterious girl possessing supernatural abilities, eventually uncovering the existence of a sinister parallel world. And the German series Dark masterfully weaves a tale of a child's disappearance in a forest, unraveling profound secrets tied to time travel and intergenerational connections across 3 family lines. Even in the Arab world, literature and cinema have not shied away from engaging with this genre. Works such as Conqueror of Time and Dancing with the Devil are examples of homegrown explorations of science fiction, echoing the global fascination with the possibilities of traversing time. These are but a few among dozens, perhaps hundreds, of literary, cinematic, and television works that have cemented time travel in the collective consciousness. No longer merely a fantastical notion, but a dream that science might one day bring to life. Or at the very least, a subject worthy of serious inquiry within the halls of theoretical physics. One intriguing case often cited is that of American author Morgan Robertson, who in the year 1898 published a novel titled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. Though the novel does not directly address time travel, it remarkably foretold the sinking of the Titanic 14 years before the real-life disaster occurred. The parallels are uncanny. Both ships bore nearly identical names, both struck an iceberg, both lacked sufficient lifeboats, and many more startling similarities. Some argue Robertson had intimate knowledge of large ship designs of the era, making his fictional catastrophe plausible. Others believe, quite fantastically, that he somehow glimpsed the future and transcribed it into fiction. Yet most who recount this story omit the fact that after the Titanic sank in the year 1912, Robertson republished his novel with edits to make it more closely mirror reality. And this brings us to the crux of the matter, the enigma of time travel itself, or rather, the great vortex that has drawn the human mind into a house of mirrors, where nothing is quite real. But is there something real behind the mirage? Let's continue our journey through the lens of religion, exploring true stories of time travelers and the gateway of dreams into the symbols and signs of time. A journey that may reveal one of the greatest deceptions in human history and show us that we may have spent lifetimes chasing phantoms, uncertain whether they are echoes of a forgotten past or the ghost of a future that may never come. Could your dreams be more than just fleeting illusions? Could sleep, or even moments of deep contemplation, serve as gateways to the future? Has anyone truly traveled through time? And is there a secret time machine hidden by the global elite whose revelation could upend the world as we know it? Or is it all simply a deception, a lullaby for the mind, coaxing us into retreat from reality? Though the theoretical possibility of time travel, in principle at least, has been established scientifically, as explored in the previous section, the notion of returning to the past remains impossible. To date, no experiment has ever proven the feasibility of moving backward in time. The great stumbling block remains the paradox of causality, or more famously, the grandfather paradox. If a person were to travel into the past and kill his grandfather before he fathered his child, that time traveler would never have existed in the first place, thus making the journey impossible. This paradox has confounded both scientists and philosophers, prompting a host of alternative theories aimed at resolving it. One such proposal is the theory of the multiverse or parallel universes, which suggests that any alteration in the past simply branches reality into a new timeline, leaving the original one untouched. This implies the existence of infinite timelines, each diverging at the moment of every decision or event. In this model, time is not linear, but rather a branching structure of countless trajectories. Thus, time travel might not mean rewriting the present, but navigating between divergent temporal paths. Some scientists and believers in alternative theories assert that invisible dimensions affect the structure of time, and that these hidden realms might serve as portals through which time can be traversed. From a religious perspective, believers hold with certainty that the Creator, exalted be He, is the knower of the unseen and the seen, that His knowledge encompasses all things. Time and space do not confine Him. The past, present, and future are but one before Him. He is the maker of time beyond its bounds and has full dominion over it. In this light, time may be seen not as a force that rules over the Creator, but as a creation held entirely within His grasp. Therefore, should time travel occur, it would not contradict faith, so long as it is understood to occur only by divine will, not by human mastery. The Creator may suspend, manipulate, or reshape time as He pleases, allowing certain individuals to witness events from another era as a sign of His creative power, not as an endorsement of time travel as a repeatable scientific phenomenon. Indeed, the sacred scriptures are not devoid of references, both explicit and implicit, to events in which time either stood still, moved unusually, or allowed transition across epochs beyond the known laws of physics. Among the most luminous of these accounts is the Isra and Miraj, the miraculous night journey in which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, and from there ascended through the heavens to the Lot tree of the utmost boundary. Upon his return, his bed was still warm from where he had slept, despite the vastness of the journey and the profundity of its events. In other words, time itself had halted, or more accurately, the material laws of time and space had dissolved before divine omnipotence. Also remarkable is the story of the Prophet Uzair, peace be upon him, who passed by a desolate village and wondered how God could bring it back to life after its destruction. So God caused him to die for 100 years, then revived him. Upon awakening, he found his donkey reduced to dust, while his food and drink remained untouched by decay. God then reassembled the donkey's bones, clothed them in flesh, and restored it to life, demonstrating before the prophet's very eyes that divine power could reanimate the dead and restore a shattered land. One could say that God had suspended time for both Uzair and his provisions, or perhaps transported them untouched 100 years into the future. The story of the righteous servant, identified by many as Al-Qadr, and the prophet Moses, peace be upon them both, may not explicitly describe time travel, yet the actions of Al-Qadr, such as slaying the boy, repairing the wall, and scuttling the ship, clearly indicate his knowledge of future events. Of course, he did not possess this foresight by his own power. Rather, the Creator chose him and granted him access to a fragment of his all-encompassing knowledge. Thus, Al-Qadr transcended the boundaries of space and time through divine will. A similar account suggesting a divine bypassing of space-time laws is found in the story of the throne of Bilqis, Queen of Sheba, which was transported from her kingdom in Yemen to the palace of Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, in Palestine. As Bilqis and her entourage journeyed towards Solomon, he requested that her throne be brought to him. That is, transported in less time than it would take her to complete the journey. A powerful Ifrit from among the jinn stepped forward and said, "I will bring it to you before you rise from your place." The Ifrit, known for immense strength and intelligence, claimed he could do this within hours, an impressive feat, yet still within the bounds of natural laws, albeit with supernatural capability. Then spoke a man who had knowledge from the book, widely believed to be Asif ibn Barkiya, Solomon's vizier and a righteous man, who said, "I will bring it to you before your glance returns to you." In other words, in the blink of an eye. This indicates an act entirely beyond natural laws, a divine intervention that folded space and time, transporting the throne across more than 2,000 kilometers in a fraction of a second. Another striking example is the story of the people of the cave, a clear allusion to time travel. These were young men who believed in God and, fleeing persecution, took refuge in a cave where they slept for 309 years. Upon waking, they believed only a day or part of a day had passed. To them, time had seemingly stood still. They had leapt from one era to another, untouched by the centuries in between, a divine suspension or transcendence of time. What is truly astonishing is that all of us experience a similar phenomenon daily through sleep. Though sleep is a natural, cyclical human state, it offers the clearest example of liberation from the law of time. In that sense, sleep may be considered a primitive form of time travel. When we fall asleep, we lose conscious awareness. Time passes in the external world, yet our perception skips seamlessly from the moment we sleep to the moment we awaken, a kind of temporal leap from past to future. During sleep, we experience dreams governed by an internal rhythm, divorced from the external world. We journey through long, surreal narratives, traversing places, times, and realms unfettered by earthly clocks. Thus, some philosophers and psychologists argue that dreams could be portals into other layers of psychological or spiritual time, or transitions into another existence, a journey through imperceptible time, or a realm beyond the worldly clock. Scientifically, the concept of the biological clock, our internal chronometer that regulates sleep and wakefulness, enables our perception of time as linked to conscious awareness. In this sense, sleep may be the oldest and simplest form of time travel, a leap from one moment to another, a passage from one state of awareness to another through unseen portals between past, present, and future. Put more simply, sleep opens gateways that temporarily release us from the prison of time. So then we all travel through time each day by divine design. But the question remains, can one do so consciously while awake? Without doubt, there are countless accounts of individuals who claim to have traveled through time. From time to time, stories emerge of people who assert they came from the future, returned to the past, or underwent experiences that transcended the boundaries of time. While most are dismissed as unverified anomalies, some are provocative enough to warrant a closer, more thoughtful examination. One of the most famous of these stories is that of a mysterious figure known as John Titor, who appeared on online forums in the year 2000, claiming to be a U.S. soldier sent from the year 2036 back to 1975 to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer, which the military allegedly needed to resolve issues related to legacy operating systems. He explained that his visit to the year 2000 was merely to see family members. Titor shared sketches of the time machine he claimed to have used and predicted that a second American Civil War would erupt in 2004, followed by a global nuclear conflict in 2015, an economic collapse, and the disintegration of the European Union. Though none of these predictions materialized, his tale continues to spark debate, and some still believe he was a genuine time traveler. Another curious account is that of Andrew Carlson, a man who allegedly amassed a fortune of $350 million in just 2 weeks through stock market investments, an implausible feat that led to his arrest. During FBI interrogation, Carlson claimed he had come from the year 2256 and had simply used his knowledge of future market trends to make precise investments. Naturally, his story was met with skepticism, but he was eventually released under surveillance, only to vanish without a trace. Even earlier, in the year 1950, a man named Rudolph Fentz was struck and killed by a car in Times Square, New York. Strangely, his attire appeared to be from the 19th century, and in his pockets were obsolete coins and an old letter. Upon investigation, authorities discovered that a man by that name had mysteriously disappeared in the year 1876. Another case occurred in the summer of 1954, when immigration officers at Tokyo International Airport reported the arrival of a man named John Zegras, carrying a passport from a non-existent country called Taured. He wore refined yet peculiar clothing and carried banknotes in unknown denominations. During questioning, he insisted he came from the year 2404 and that Taured was a European nation that had existed for centuries, allegedly located between France and Spain. Authorities detained him under close watch, but by morning, the man had vanished from his locked room. Even the photographs taken by the staff had either been erased or mysteriously lost. While some believe he was a time traveler from a parallel future in which Taured was real, others argue the story lacks credible documentation. No official police or airport records have ever confirmed the event, leading many to conclude it was a fabrication, much like the tale of Andrew Carlson, which was later revealed to be an elaborate media hoax. Another story is the story of Rudolph Fentz, which first appeared in a science fiction magazine, was later circulated as fact, and became a recurring reference in discussions about time travel. The most recent of such tales dates back to the year 2017, when a mysterious individual surfaced on YouTube under the alias Noah, claiming to be from the year 2030. He spoke of climate changes, the evolution of artificial intelligence, and even named a U.S. president who at the time had not yet taken office. His story sparked widespread controversy. Some believed he possessed genuine knowledge, while skeptics dismissed him as a clever hoaxer, especially since his videos featured a distorted voice and a blurred or shadowed face. He insisted he could not reveal his identity due to time travel laws. While none of these stories are supported by conclusive evidence, proponents of time travel theories continue to cite various phenomena as indirect proof. Among them is a scene from a circus, a film starring Charlie Chaplin in 1928, where a woman appears to be walking while speaking into what resembles a mobile phone. In a 1995 boxing match, a man in the background is seen filming with a device uncannily similar to an iPhone, despite smartphones not yet existing. There's also the image of a man wearing sunglasses and a modern jacket in a crowd photo from the 1940 reopening of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia, standing out starkly from those dressed according to the fashion of that era. Additionally, a woman in an ancient Greek statue seems to be examining a laptop. In an 1860 painting by Austrian artist Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller, a woman appears to be walking with a device resembling a cell phone in her hands. The same can be said of a man in a 1670 painting by Dutch artist Peter de Hooch, seemingly holding an object strikingly similar to a mobile phone. Some even point to celebrities who bear an uncanny resemblance to historical figures, suggesting they might be the same individuals traversing time. Yet none of this can truly be considered evidence, barely even circumstantial. These images may have been manipulated or misinterpreted, but more significantly, they fall into the realm of what psychologists call perceptual blindness or confirmation bias. This cognitive and neurological phenomenon shows that the human brain does not process all incoming information objectively, but rather filters it through the lens of prior beliefs and expectations, such as belief in ghosts, aliens, or time travel. If one expects to see something, they will perceive it, even if it isn't there. If one believes in something, it will manifest in their reality, regardless of its factual existence. This phenomenon is also referred to as mind blindness. When you believe in time travel, you focus solely on evidence that confirms your belief and disregard all that contradicts it. Even reading a simple phrase like "this is a time traveler" can prime the brain to search for validating details while ignoring or becoming blind to any disconfirming ones. In this context, numerous hypotheses and theories have emerged suggesting that time travel is not mere fiction, but concealed reality suppressed by shadowy forces that rule the world. According to these theories, real-time machines are in the possession of powerful global institutions, covert intelligence agencies, and the elite class that governs humanity from behind the scenes. Among these alleged devices is the chronovisor, a machine said to allow its user to view past events. This device was first mentioned in the book The New Vatican Secret, authored by the Italian priest Father Francois Brune in the 1970s. Brune claimed that another priest and scientist of the Vatican, Father Pellegrino Ornetti, invented this unique device in collaboration with renowned scientists such as Enrico Fermi and Wernher von Braun, both celebrated figures in physics and rocket science. It was further alleged that the chronovisor had successfully captured images from the past, including a famous photograph of Jesus Christ. These theories also reference secret intelligence programs utilizing advanced technologies, including time machines designed for espionage or altering the course of history. One such example is the Montauk Project, which has been discussed in detail previously. According to certain testimonies, children and teenagers were used as temporal pioneers and were indeed able to travel across different time periods. Another example is Project Pegasus, developed during the 1960s and 1970s by the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. Andrew Byago, one of the individuals who claims to have participated in the program, stated that he was involved as a child and witnessed historical events such as the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, a pivotal moment in the American Civil War. He also claimed to have observed future speeches in the year 2045. Byago further asserted that the U.S. government employed technology based on radiant energy, as described by Nikola Tesla, technology capable of instantaneous temporal displacement. In addition, some theories suggest that the global elite, a consortium of billionaires, world leaders, and executives of major corporations, possess highly sophisticated time travel machinery, which they use to safeguard their interests and manipulate the trajectory of political and economic events. These powers allegedly keep such technologies hidden from the public, promoting instead the narrative that time travel is scientifically impossible. In doing so, they ensure exclusive control over a force potent enough to rewrite history, predict the outcomes of wars, and influence the global economy using information retrieved from the future. The sudden emergence of groundbreaking technologies or critical political decisions, in this view, may be interpreted as the result of foreknowledge of future developments. Some even argue that today's tightly controlled media and technological landscape is part of a broader effort to erase the true past and engineer the future according to clandestine agendas crafted in secrecy. These efforts, they believe, aim either at geopolitical domination or at preventing the social and economic collapse that might ensue should humanity become aware of its true temporal condition, one that could even destabilize the very fabric of space-time. Do you see now how truth is often hidden among lies, designed to bewilder the curious mind in a whirlwind of confusion and doubt? As though some hidden hand excels at weaving a fog around all that is essential, drowning us in misleading details that resemble the truth, yet are nothing but its distant shadow. Thus, we are offered only half the truth, while the other half is buried beneath layers of media clamor, conflicting interpretations, and paid opinions. Naturally, cinema and its affiliated media arms have not lagged behind in capitalizing on this trend, feeding minds with dozens, perhaps hundreds, of films and dramatic productions. Consequently, time travel has shifted from a dream residing deep within the human psyche, from a haunting question about destiny, freedom, and identity, into a reality housed in scientific laboratories. What once belonged to philosophical musings and sacred texts has now become a realm where knowledge and belief, science and imagination, are inextricably intertwined. Modern science may offer preliminary keys suggesting that time travel is theoretically possible, yet it remains incapable of providing a means to achieve it without breaching the laws of the universe or compromising ethical principles. Philosophy compels us to ask, is time something we traverse or something that emanates from within us? From a religious perspective, time is conceived as a complete creation, known entirely to the divine, transcended only by miracles ordained by his will. Given all of this, despite the allure and suspense surrounding the notion of time travel, it remains in truth a modern myth, one employed to nourish public delusions and distract minds from the pressing realities of life. In fact, it is often used as a tool of cultural and media control. The widespread fascination with time travel, whether in novels, films, or alleged testimonies of temporal voyagers, serves primarily as a diversion from the world's current social, political, and economic crises. It functions as a form of entertainment not unlike football matches or tales of extraterrestrial visitors, a diversion that dulls critical thought and stifles any real momentum toward change, encouraging instead a culture of escapism. Though Hollywood films in particular have played a significant role in reinforcing this idea and making it seem plausible, much of what is portrayed is not grounded in solid science. Rather, it is driven by emotional or narrative logic, designed to steer public opinion towards superficial fantasy and away from analytical thinking. This saturation subtly convinces the subconscious that time travel is not only possible, but real, even though modern science has yet to validate it. Renowned physicists such as Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose have affirmed that the paradoxes inherent in traveling to the past render the concept more self-contradictory than feasible. Moreover, the lack of concrete evidence, despite immense technological advancement and documentation capabilities, relegates any claim of time travel to the realm of science fiction, not scientific inquiry. It joins a long line of legends that mirror humanity's fascination with the extraordinary. The flying philosopher, the fortune teller, the philosopher's stone, myths that pull us away from confronting life's challenges and transforming them for the better. Instead, we create alternate fantasy worlds as a coping mechanism for fear or helplessness about the future, squandering mental energy on illusions while the real problems of the present mount unresolved, and the future slips away, not built through daydreams, but through awareness, action, and determination. Civilization cannot be founded upon fantasy and the impossible, but upon the will to change, to enlighten, and to achieve. This is not to reject imaginative thought, dreams, or aspirations for the future, nor to dismiss the wisdom of the past. But there is a vast difference between dreaming in order to realize a vision and dreaming simply to escape. The former drives progress, the latter traps the dreamer in a spiral of paralysis, lethargy, and surrender.